as managers, as orchestrators of a librarian. Their job is to not simply listen to the community, because the community often has many, many, many different voices, and often voices in conflict. And a librarian's job is to listen to the different voices, to weave together a community fabric where possible, and to always have their values as part of this conversation. A librarian doesn't disappear. A librarian is very active, and their voice is active in the library world. And finally, dedicated to knowledge. Now that's oftentimes misconstrued as dedicated to materials, dedicated to books, dedicated to databases, dedicated to stuff. But that's not what I mean. Knowledge is a uniquely human attribute. It's what people understand and how they see the world. When they write a book, it's not recorded knowledge. It becomes an artifact. It becomes a shadow, a reflection of what someone knows. And when someone reads the book, they're not having a conversation with the author. They're not automatically getting the knowledge of the author. They're having a conversation with themselves. They're building new knowledge. Knowledge that is uniquely theirs and is contextualized by their lived and world experience. And that's why when I say that librarians are stewards of knowledge, they're actually stewards of communities and how communities learn. Instead of focusing on collection development, we need to focus on connection development. It's not just important, but not just how do we have a collection, how do we organize materials, how do we do some services around literacy? It's understanding the people. How does this individual learn? What does this individual know, and how will that spark the imagination of this individual? How can these groups get together? What's the possibility we never thought of? What's the new business that's created? How can we understand new laws and policy and legislation? That's what we're trying to facilitate here in our buildings or online, with our books or with the space, with people coming together and saying, this is how we see a better world. And librarians marshaling themselves to make that happen. Putting together the tools and the time and the place, but ultimately the idea of a conversation, a great conversation within the community that expands to other communities, that expands to regions, that expands to states, that expands across the globe on what a better tomorrow is. That's the power of librarianship. That giving people the tools to know, to learn, to understand as a verb, that's what we're seeking to do, to spark a new community that not only serves a community, but ultimately one that saves a community. We must, hand in hand with our communities, serve and save these communities. We must go in and work with those elected, work with those who did the electing, work with our professors, work with our students, work with our teachers, our principals, our plumbers, our housewives, our mechanics, our engineers, to create a great conversation about what we mean by a better tomorrow. And libraries are uniquely situated to do this because they're very local to that community, to that college, to that business, dedicated to knowledge and learning, not constrained by a curriculum, not constrained by a textbook, but open to understand. For those in school and who have been out of school for 50 and 60 years. That's what libraries give us the opportunity to do. And if you, in a very small community, can empower and prepare people in your local community to do this work, then imagine that your compatriots are doing it in their community. And their compatriots are doing it in their community, and I'm doing it in Texas, and people are doing it in China, and other people are doing it in Amsterdam, and etc. And we begin a grand conversation about the human condition. And I know that sounds probably too grand, but what it begins with is it begins with someone picking up a book and someone saying, I didn't know that. And now they do. It begins with someone admitting that they don't know something and having help saying, that's okay. Let's help you. In creating the spaces of discussion, of conversation, of vital social infrastructure. Just as we need roads, just as we need power, we need libraries. We need places to come together and discuss, to places to be a community, places to argue in a civil way, places to disagree, but ultimately places to build and forge consensus, to discuss what it means to be in a democracy or a republic, to discuss what it means to be better in this place tomorrow, to discuss what is the vital knowledge and how do we learn it. And that includes everyone in a community, not just the majority, but the minority. Bringing them together and letting them feel safe and letting them feel like they have power. And librarians to teach basic literacy and then information literacy and then digital literacy and then all of this, they can't do it alone. They need to work with teachers. They need to work with restaurant owners. They need to work with parents and grandparents and grandchildren. And so the library is not one group of professionals and a collection. It is a community and a space of discovery. That's what power we have with our libraries. And for too long, we've taken them for granted. And for too long, we have underestimated them. We must expect more out of our libraries, more than places that people who could already read go to read, more than places that are built in the walled gardens of a university or a college. We must expect libraries to be active, positive, radical change agents that seek to make a better tomorrow, that have a view of openness, that have a view of power within the people, power of democracy, power to understand and see the world differently, to come together to tackle the hardest issues we face today. That's what we need to expect of our libraries. And no one library and no one librarian can do that. And no group of librarians can do that. Only librarians working in concert with communities can create this movement of positive change. I thank you again for your time. I thank you again for this opportunity. I hope that we begin a long-standing conversation about how we can expect more of our libraries and how we can build a better future. Thank you.